Welcome to Zodiac Talks Tarot, where we trade superstition for substance and ask the sky tough questions like a newsroom editor with a telescope. I'm your longtime researcher, the sort who cross-references birth charts with psychology journals and keeps a slim volume of Buddhist wisdom on the desk to remind me that clarity isn't a thunderclap, it's a quiet click in the mind. And today's focus is Sagittarius, philosopher, wanderer, truth-teller, because the theme of the day is simple and startling. A lawyer is about to reach out, and whether that advocate arrives as an actual professional with documents or as a symbolic messenger of fairness and closure, divine justice is moving in your favor, not as drama but as design. Think of the universe as an old, careful judge in a robe stitched from starlight who has been reviewing your case for longer than you've realized, itemizing every time you chose principle over convenience and took the long road because you prefer a clean conscience to a quick win. And now, without fanfare, you are being called forward for a decision that affirms what you knew but couldn't prove. I want you to breathe like someone stepping out of a crowded room into cool air, because the clarity approaching you wears calm the way mountains wear snow. And if you've noticed the temperature in your life dropping from fever to steady, that was the first sign the verdict was near. You've been living, lately, in a kind of weatherless season. Ideas stalled, momentum caught in red tape, conversations that should have been simple suddenly labyrinthine, and you blamed yourself, which is very human, but the chart tells a different story. Karmic timing, Saturnian audits, the 9th house territory of law, belief, and big picture direction getting scrubbed clean of old residue. Your optimism was misread as naivete, your forgiveness mistaken for permission, and your silence interpreted as surrender. But silence, for Sagittarius, is often a strategy, an arrow held at full draw until the target is honest enough to deserve the shot. The call or message that lands now may concern a contract, a dispute, an academic credential, a travel or immigration matter, a creative ownership issue, or simply a long overdue recognition where someone in authority says, "You were right to wait." And if the news comes from inside rather than outside, an insight that ends a years-long confusion, accept that mind-made verdict with the same respect you'd give a judge's ruling, because the higher self is your first and final attorney. Psychologically, you're closing the gap between your values and your habits, and that's where freedom hides. Not in passports or plane tickets but in the nervous system, learning that it no longer has to brace for impact. And yes, we can laugh about it, because Sagittarius heals by laughing at the absurdity of trying to schedule destiny. How many times did you tidy the house hoping good news would arrive when what actually worked was surrendering the broom and sitting still long enough to hear the inner phone ring? The Buddhist in me would add that letting go isn't quitting, it's releasing the tight fist around what no longer serves the path, while the novelist in me notes that protagonists rarely get closure in loud scenes. Usually it's a quiet exchange in a hallway that turns the plot, a single sentence that unlocks a locked year. So let's talk situational reality. If someone previously framed you as difficult for insisting on fairness, watch how the narrative changes when the facts finally arrive wearing shoes. And if you've been stuck in endless negotiation, expect a third-party advocate to appear, someone with fluency in both law and timing who translates your plain truth into institutional language. Astrologically, we're looking at long-term lessons culminating in recognizable outcomes, paper trails, signatures, official emails, or public acknowledgements. And spiritually, we're studying a basic law of expansion. You don't grow by smashing walls. You grow by outgrowing rooms, and the room you've been in has shrunk so slowly. Let's talk about something every Sagittarius knows intuitively but rarely puts into words. The universe keeps receipts. It may not send monthly statements or use direct email, but trust me, it tracks every act of courage, every quiet refusal to compromise your values, and every moment you bit your tongue instead of lowering your vibration to match someone else's chaos. What you've been living through lately has been nothing short of a spiritual audit, a thorough karmic review conducted by forces that understand the fine print of your destiny far better than any human accountant ever could. Somewhere between those restless nights and the silent hours where faith was your only company, life began cross-checking the math. The project you poured yourself into that earned applause for everyone but you? Logged. The friendship that dissolved under half-truths and avoidance? Recorded. The opportunity that slipped away while someone else took shortcuts? Filed under deferred but not denied. The cosmic books, it turns out, balance on their own schedule. Now, you might laugh at the idea of Saturn as a bean counter in the sky, an old auditor with reading glasses, a coffee mug labeled Karma Department, and the patience of a saint, but that's the image I keep returning to. He's been in your chart, red pen in hand, circling inconsistencies not to shame you, but to show you where endurance replaced performance, where integrity outweighed recognition. You've been running a long game in a short attention span world, and while everyone else was busy turning their pain into posts, you quietly turned yours into philosophy. When people called you lucky, they missed the truth. Luck, for Sagittarius, isn't randomness, it's resonance. It's what happens when the moral compass in your chest finally syncs with the clockwork of the universe. So yes, the audit is over, and the verdict reads paid in full. You've cleared the karmic backlog. You can almost hear the soft rustle of celestial paperwork being filed away as the universe stamps your case closed. But unlike past times when vindication lit a fire of rebellion in you, this next flight won't be fueled by adrenaline. It's powered by something quieter, sturdier clarity. The kind that doesn't need to shout. Imagine the relief of realizing you don't have to keep proving you were right, the truth has matured enough to speak for itself. That's the spiritual equivalent of financial freedom. Now, about that long intermission you've been living, the months, maybe even years, when your famous Sagittarian spark seemed reduced to a pilot light. The creative lightning that once struck without warning began arriving as faint static. Your big ideas felt trapped in rush hour traffic. But here's a secret most people never learn: stillness is not the enemy of growth, it's the soil beneath it. You weren't stuck, you were steeping. You weren't being punished, you were being seasoned. The pause in your life wasn't a void, it was a womb. The world had to slow down so your spirit could finally catch up to its own potential. Now that your inner weather is clearing, the old rhythm is returning, not as chaos, but as music. That flicker you feel behind your eyes lately, that sudden interest in plans you'd shelved, that instinct to pack a bag or reopen a book, it's not random. It's your higher purpose circling back like a loyal friend, asking if you're ready to walk together again. This isn't the fiery burst of a new adventure, it's the slow burn of direction re-established. You're remembering what it feels like to be guided instead of merely driven. Astrologically, the timing couldn't be more precise. The 9th house, the Sagittarian homeland of wisdom, travel, law, and philosophical truth, is undergoing a reset. Call it a cosmic renovation project. Old belief systems are being sanded down, outdated ideals are being replaced with functional, lived understanding. And it's no coincidence that talk of a lawyer reaching out keeps echoing through your readings. Whether that manifests as an actual professional holding documents, or as a symbolic messenger, a teacher, a mentor, a higher calling, the energy is the same: justice with timing. Someone or something is arriving to help clear your path, not through confrontation, but through precision. Yet the part most people miss is that divine justice doesn't begin with courts or contracts, it begins in the nervous system. Before it appears in your inbox, it settles in your chest. You'll recognize it as that quiet, almost suspicious calm that replaces anxiety. It's the internal voice that whispers, "I don't need to chase validation anymore." When that sentence lands, the tide has already turned. The outer world is just catching up. In psychological terms, this is a shift from external to internal locus of control, a fancy way of saying you've stopped outsourcing your worth. Spiritually, it's the first step of non-attachment, that Buddhist lesson no fire sign ever learns easily. You're moving from I must win to I already am, and that's the kind of enlightenment that shows up wearing business casual. You may find that even your sense of humor is different now. Where once you used irony as armor, you might find yourself laughing with genuine relief. The Sagittarian wit that could slice through hypocrisy like a scalpel is softening into something warmer, a comedy of wisdom rather than sarcasm. You can joke about your own past impatience without bitterness because you finally see the design behind the delay. And yes, let's not ignore the cosmic irony. The universe made the most restless sign in the zodiac sit still long enough to learn patience. It's almost cruelly poetic. But that's how Sagittarius learns, through experience so vivid it becomes parable. You had to feel the boredom, the stagnation, the suspicion that life forgot you, so that when movement returns, you don't sprint blindly but stride purposefully. You've earned your rhythm. So what now? Well, you're cleared for takeoff, but this flight is different. You're not escaping anymore, you're ascending. The jet fuel is focus. The altitude is authenticity, and the destination isn't a place but a frequency, a life that finally feels like it matches who you are. When people ask what changed, you can tell them the truth with a smile, nothing external. Just the audit coming back clean. In the end, Sagittarius, your story reads like a case study in cosmic patience. The universe tested your faith not to break it, but to prove it was self-sustaining. And if you ever doubt whether the delay was worth it, just look at how much less you need to explain yourself now. That's real freedom, the kind that doesn't demand a witness. The spiritual accountant has closed the file, stamped it complete, and handed you back your pen. It's time to start a new ledger, not of debts, but of dreams. There is something almost poetic about watching a Sagittarius try to maintain composure when life decides to throw a cosmic banana peel in their path. One moment you're the picture of serenity, cross-legged on the floor, breathing in enlightenment like a pro. The next, you're yelling at your Wi-Fi router for buffering your meditation video and questioning whether Mercury is retrograde or just mocking you personally. That, in a nutshell, is the divine comedy of your existence. You were not built for quiet perfection, you were built to wrestle chaos into meaning and somehow make it funny along the way. This isn't failure, it's a spiritual coping mechanism, and it's one of the reasons people are drawn to your energy. When others drown in disappointment, you turn your breakdowns into punchlines. It's not that you don't feel pain, it's that you instinctively understand that laughter is alchemy. Humor doesn't erase suffering, it melts its edges. You don't repress emotion, you remix it. You turn heartbreak into a story, setbacks into jokes, and confusion into philosophy. That's not denial, that's evolution wearing a grin. Humor, for Sagittarius, isn't decoration, it's armor. Not the hard metallic kind that blocks emotion, but the flexible, golden chainmail of perspective. When the universe knocks you down, you're the sign that stands up, brushes off the dust, and says, well, that escalated quickly. And somehow, the simple act of saying it makes the pain lighter. In the Buddhist sense, this laughter is mindfulness in motion. It's your awareness refusing to take form too seriously. You laugh not because you don't care, but because you know everything is temporary, including the suffering. A Sagittarian laugh, after all, is the sound of the soul saying, I will not let this moment define me. Even in despair, you manage to sparkle like a phoenix wearing sunglasses, equal parts tragedy and glamour. This attitude is not a quirk, it's sacred technology. It's how your sign transmutes pain into wisdom, and wisdom into joy. It's how you convert the dense lead of disappointment into the bright gold of experience. You don't escape life's absurdities, you expand to fit them. You find the punchline in the paradox and the meaning in the mess. That's why the universe never punishes you for being bold, it prepares you to turn every loss into literature, every fall into a fable. You were never meant to live a predictable story, Sagittarius. Predictable stories don't sell tickets, and they certainly don't evolve souls. You were meant to live a myth, a story that others study to understand the human spirit. And every comic disaster, every ridiculous twist of fate, is simply another chapter in your epic. Now, this humor-driven healing is about to evolve into something deeper, a philosophical awakening that feels both ancient and new. There's a Buddhist teaching that says, "Do not seek the truth, only cease to cherish opinions." For Sagittarius, that's revolutionary. You've spent a lifetime as the Zodiac's philosopher, armed with opinions polished to perfection, believing that meaning lived in the debate itself. You've read, researched, argued, and explored. But what's coming next isn't intellectual discovery, it's existential surrender. The truth you've been chasing doesn't live in the library or the classroom anymore, it lives in the silence between breaths. The irony is almost comic. The great philosopher of the Zodiac finds enlightenment not in speaking, but in shutting up. The shift you're entering isn't about losing your beliefs, it's about outgrowing their cages. You're no longer interested in being right, you're interested in being real. Where once you sought meaning, you're now becoming the embodiment of meaning itself. It's as if the constellation of your life has rearranged into a new pattern, and suddenly the stars make sense again. That intellectual fire that used to burn outward now burns inward, illuminating rather than interrogating. You're moving from "I must explain this" to "I will live this." This is the paradox of your enlightenment, it begins the moment you stop trying to earn it. And as this transformation unfolds, old parts of you will dissolve quietly. Your confidence, creativity, and sense of divine timing, those parts that dimmed during confusion, are flickering back to life. You'll find yourself trusting silence in a way you never did before, feeling calm where you once demanded answers. It's like realizing the compass you were waving at the sky has been inside your chest all along. The Sagittarius who once needed to know is becoming the Sagittarius who simply knows. And that shift, subtle as it seems, changes everything. But before we wrap this philosophical monologue in a bow of serenity, we must return to one more important character in your story, the lawyer. Let's be clear, sometimes this figure really is a lawyer, an actual human holding papers with your name on them and news that restores balance where there was imbalance. Maybe it's a legal resolution, a professional breakthrough, or an overdue acknowledgement of your integrity. But more often, this archetype is symbolic, a sign of cosmic advocacy. It's the universe itself sending representation on your behalf, a reminder that truth never stays buried forever. The advocate may appear as a mentor who steps in with perfect timing, a message that clears your name, or an intuitive revelation that silences years of self-doubt. However it comes, its purpose is the same: restoration of dignity. You're not just being cleared of misunderstandings, you're being reinstated in your rightful place in the order of things. This is not luck, it's justice maturing. You earned this outcome not by shouting louder, but by refusing to sink lower. While others chose bitterness, you chose alignment. And the universe, being both observant and patient, took note. Psychologically, this is a moment of rebalancing. The external world is simply mirroring what has already been resolved within you. The fight is over because you stopped feeding it. In the social sense, it may look like a promotion, a settlement, or a reconciliation. Spiritually, it's the restoration of faith in fairness itself. This justice isn't reactive, it's redemptive. And when it arrives, it won't feel explosive. It will feel obvious, as if life were simply correcting a typo it made years ago. So, Sagittarius, as this triad of humor, awakening, and vindication plays out, remember what makes you magnificent. You are the cosmic comedian and the philosopher priest rolled into one. You make meaning out of madness. You laugh your way through lessons most people cry through. And you do it not out of denial, but out of divine insight. When life gets absurd, you remember that the Buddha also smiled, that truth has a sense of humor, and that wisdom delivered with laughter lands softer but lasts longer. So go ahead, laugh, learn, and let justice do its work. You're not merely surviving the human story, you're revising it into something worth reading twice. There comes a point in every Sagittarian life when the real courtroom drama unfolds not under fluorescent lights but inside the mind, where the gavel is your own inner voice and the jury is made up of your memories. You know the scene well. The prosecutor in you lists the charges too impulsive, too trusting, too idealistic, too forgiving. The defendant, also you, tries to plead context. You were young, you were hopeful, you were chasing something sacred and possibly delusional. The trial drags on for years, sometimes decades, with no recess and no clear verdict. But here's the thing about this trial, it was never about guilt. It was about growth. The so-called mistakes you keep cross-examining weren't crimes, they were expansions. Every detour was a lesson dressed as chaos. Every heartbreak, every lost opportunity, every wrong turn was a piece of cartography on the grand atlas of your evolution. You weren't off course, you were sketching the edges of your own map. Let's be honest, Sagittarius, you have always been a bit of a wanderer in your own psyche. You don't travel to escape, you travel to confirm that the horizon keeps moving because you do. So when your inner courtroom replays the old footage, when it shows you loving the wrong people with too much sincerity or chasing the right dream before it was ripe, remember that timing is part of training. The universe has a funny way of teaching you to aim your arrow not just with precision, but with patience. The verdict, at last, is in. You are innocent of self-betrayal. You were never naive, only brave enough to believe before the evidence arrived. You didn't fail, you rehearsed for mastery. And now, in the year of triumph 2025, you'll begin to see that every no you received was not a rejection but a not yet. The doors that once refused to open weren't locked against you, they were still under construction. This internal acquittal comes with its own signs, because the universe, mischievous as ever, loves to turn life into a cosmic scavenger hunt. Have you noticed the same numbers following you around lately? 7, for instance, popping up in phone numbers, receipts, clocks at 7:07. 7 is divine closure, the celestial symbol for graduation. And right on its heels comes 3, the vibration of rebirth, joy, and creation. Together, 7 and 3 form a sacred rhythm, ending and beginning dancing in perfect time. For Sagittarius, this pairing is no coincidence, it's your spiritual signature. It says, you've completed the lesson, now let's make art from it. Synchronicities aren't random. They're the breadcrumbs of destiny, designed to lead you gently back to awareness. You might hear an old song that once anchored a younger version of you, and suddenly it feels like a message rather than nostalgia. You might catch yourself reading the same phrase twice in different books, or hearing your own advice echoed by someone else as if the universe were winking through their mouth. Pay attention to these winks. They're proof that your dialogue with the cosmos is ongoing, that even when you thought no one was listening, something was. You may also find yourself meeting new people who don't flatter your ego but sharpen your mind. They challenge your intellect, not your patience, and that's the real test. The universe is refining your wisdom, teaching you to engage without attachment, to speak truth without needing to win the debate. After all, being right has always been a temporary thrill, being free is permanent bliss. The Sagittarius who once needed to be the philosopher in the room is now learning to be the presence that makes philosophy unnecessary. You've evolved from quoting truth to embodying it. And that brings us to the next act of your journey, the shift from striving to receiving. This might be the most difficult lesson for you, because let's face it, Sagittarius, you are an overachiever even at inner peace. You meditate like you're training for the Olympics of enlightenment, timing your breath, perfecting your posture, trying to nail serenity. The irony would make a monk laugh. But here's the cosmic joke: the moment you stop trying to achieve peace, peace finally clocks in for its shift. True serenity doesn't show up when you chase it, it slips in when you're too tired to keep chasing anything at all. That's your paradox in a nutshell. You treat enlightenment like a cross-country road trip when it's been waiting for you in your living room this whole time, wearing your slippers and wondering why you left in the first place. You've been looking for the divine in mountaintops and foreign lands when it's been hiding in your next exhale. And right now, the energy around you is moving from motion to magnetism. The universe doesn't want your effort, it wants your openness. The divine lawyer, the cosmic advocate who's been handling your karmic paperwork, is wrapping up the details. You don't have to micromanage the outcome anymore. Your only job is to keep the door open and say, sincerely and out loud if you can, I receive. Try it. There's power in those two words. Feel what happens in your body when you say them. The shoulders drop a little, the breath deepens, the heartbeat steadies. That's your system remembering that safety and surrender are cousins, not enemies. That's the moment when destiny stops feeling like an argument and starts feeling like a conversation. The tension between past and potential finally dissolves because you're no longer judging one by the standards of the other. If you need a metaphor, think of life as jazz. The structure matters, but the magic lives in improvisation. You've been trying to play from sheet music written by other people's expectations. Now, you're switching to intuition. You're not performing for the crowd anymore, you're playing for the joy of sound itself. That's what the shift from striving to receiving really is, the move from proving your worth to living it. And here's where the humor sneaks back in. You'll catch yourself doing something beautifully human, like scheduling time to be spontaneous or setting goals for letting go. Don't scold yourself for it, laugh. The universe certainly is. It's laughing with affection, like a parent watching a child try to carry all the toys at once. Because that's you, Sagittarius, forever juggling inspiration, freedom, philosophy, and faith, convinced you can balance them all if you just try harder. But the divine is saying, you don't have to juggle anymore. Just open your hands. So as this next chapter unfolds, remember, the trial inside you is over, the signs outside you are real, and the race you thought you were running was never a competition, it was choreography. Every misstep, every delay, every fall was part of the dance. This is your cue to stop pushing and start allowing. The music is still playing, and it's your turn to move, not to chase, not to prove, but to receive. There's a phrase that tends to make people either roll their eyes or straighten their posture: the chosen ones. It sounds lofty, dramatic, maybe even a little self-indulgent. But let's set the record straight. Being chosen never meant being superior. It meant being burdened differently. It meant being the kind of soul the universe trusts to keep laughing while walking through fire. And Sagittarius, you are precisely that kind of soul. You weren't chosen for comfort, you were chosen for clarity. You're the philosopher warrior of the Zodiac, equal parts teacher and trickster, born with a telescope in one hand and a match in the other. Your destiny is to turn chaos into wisdom and pain into something that at least gets a laugh at the dinner table later. It's not always pretty, but it's always honest. Your life refuses to stay ordinary, not because the universe is cruel, but because you're built to prove that optimism isn't naivete, it's rebellion. You are living proof that joy can be an act of defiance, that humor can be holy, and that a broken heart is simply a philosopher's tuition payment. You don't stay down long enough to rot, you compost your pain into stories that feed other people's courage. You turn heartbreak into TED Talks and mistakes into metaphors, and somehow even your failures leave people inspired. That's your strange, luminous duty to remind the rest of us that freedom begins in the mind, not the passport. So when you hear the term chosen one, don't wear it like a crown, wear it like a compass. Let it point you toward humility, not hierarchy, You're not here to prove your worth, you're here to illuminate the human condition, to laugh at the absurdity of it all while still believing in its beauty. The world needs your laughter, not your perfection. Your resilience is not a competition trophy, it's a teaching tool. The way you rise again and again reminds everyone that collapse isn't the end, it's part of the rhythm. You were chosen not because you're flawless, but because you're fluent in falling and finding meaning in it. But of course, Sagittarius can't talk about destiny without talking about growth. The law of expansion is practically written in your DNA. For you, growth isn't optional, it's oxygen. The moment you stop learning, you suffocate. But here's the secret most people forget: expansion always comes with endings. The universe doesn't gently tap you on the shoulder when it's time to move on, it yanks the rug out from under you. And while you're lying on the floor questioning your life choices, the cosmos is up there muttering, "You're welcome." It's not cruelty, it's cosmic compassion. Because what's too small for your spirit will eventually collapse under the weight of your potential. When Uranus shakes your foundation or Pluto tears down the walls of your comfort zone, it's not punishment, it's permission. Permission to evolve, to move, to become more of who you really are. The universe knows you can't stay in tiny rooms built for outdated versions of yourself, so it demolishes them. That's why you sometimes lose what you thought you needed because your soul outgrew it. So if your job, your relationship, or even your worldview feels suddenly too tight, don't panic. It's just your spirit asking for more sky. Remember, you're ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, abundance, and unfiltered honesty. You can't shrink to fit into anything less than truth. The more you resist change, the louder the universe gets, until finally it just blows the door open and says, "There. Try walking through it now." And now, Sagittarius, we arrive at the part of the story that feels like justice, the final verdict. You've been through enough trials, both literal and metaphorical, to know that justice doesn't always come in courtrooms or headlines. It comes in alignment. It comes when everything that once delayed you reveals itself not as opposition, but as timing. The forces that blocked you weren't enemies, they were timekeepers. They weren't saying no, they were saying not yet. They were making sure your success didn't arrive half-baked, that your purpose didn't show up before you were ready to live it. And now? The oven dings. The waiting ends. The moment ripens. Your clarity, your freedom, your rightful opportunities, they're re-emerging now, not as prizes for good behavior but as the natural consequences of authenticity. The universe doesn't reward pretending. It rewards truth. The cosmic lawyer who once handled your karmic paperwork isn't here to argue your case anymore. They're here to hand you the judgment already written, in favor of Sagittarius for perseverance under uncertainty, optimism under fire, and truth under pressure. Case closed. There's no appeal, no objection, no need for further evidence. The decision stands because it's cosmic law. And as you stand at this turning point, take a breath. Divine justice rarely shouts. It doesn't always arrive with trumpets and applause. Sometimes it whispers. It comes as a phone call that clears your name, a message that reopens a door, or a silence that finally feels like peace. It comes as a small, unexpected moment when you realize you no longer need to fight for what is already yours. This is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your everything. So trust the process, Sagittarius. Laugh at the chaos. Keep your bow aimed at wonder, not fear. Because when you walk in truth, the universe doesn't just follow, it celebrates. Every planet, every star, every unseen force in the cosmic machinery nods in approval, saying, they did it their way. You've earned the right to rest without guilt, to dream without doubt, to live without permission. This is your year of triumph 2025, not because everything will be easy, but because you finally know who you are when things get hard. And before we close, let me speak to you not just as an astrologer but as someone who's studied people long enough to know that joy isn't a luxury, it's a practice. The world can be absurd, unpredictable, and at times unkind, but that's precisely why your light matters. Your laughter is medicine. Your curiosity is rebellion. Your hope is revolution. So, my fiery philosopher, let yourself live, not just survive. Dance with uncertainty, flirt with the unknown, and treat every challenge as a mischievous riddle the universe designed for your amusement. For my dear Sagittarius friends who may be watching this, yes, even you sensitive souls, take a page from Sagittarius. Life is not a problem to solve but a mystery to experience. Don't be afraid to love harder, laugh louder, and let life surprise you. The stars have already written your part, your only task is to perform it with heart. And as always, if this message resonated with you, take a moment to share that energy. Like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel, Zodiac Talks Tarot. Each week, we explore the wisdom of the cosmos, not to predict your fate but to remind you of your freedom. You are not a victim of the stars, you are their reflection. So here's to the chosen ones, to the dreamers and truth seekers, to every Sagittarius standing at the edge of a new beginning. The universe isn't judging you anymore, it's standing to applaud.